Hi guys, what was Nigel Farage doing just before the local elections? Well, what the head of Reform UK does best, ramping up fear of foreigners. So in what could be seen as something of an own goal by the government, one of its contractors for housing asylum seekers, Serco, has put out a list of locations it's seeking to accommodate those being moved out of ex-hotels. Farage in this clip just days before the May elections pointed to the camera claiming that asylum seekers are heading in your direction. Pretty disgraceful stuff, especially considering his previous statements.
We've just passed a milestone. 10,000 people have now crossed the English Channel so far this year. That is nearly 50% up on last year. And at the same time, Serco, one of the big providers of hotel spaces for these illegal immigrants, has now put this list out on social media saying we want to rent your house. We'll rent it for 5 years, we'll pay you a premium rate. So if the hotels weren't bad enough, let me promise you, with the tens of thousands that are going to come this year, one of those residences will be very close to you. It is wrong, it is unfair, it is totally out of control, and when Starmer said he'd smash the gangs, well look, he's failed completely and utterly.
Okay, is it just me, or is it strange that he's filming this in what appears to be a middle-class area? Maybe it's just a coincidence, but his rhetoric is, they're coming for you. You know, these asylum seekers used to be locked away in hotels at the edge of town or in working-class areas, but now they're coming for the middle class as well. They're coming to your community. They could be at the end of your street. So the rhetoric is pretty powerful, and Farage is very good at using narratives and using imagery. But maybe I'm over-reading this. Now, isn't it ironic that this guy, who until a few years ago was basically harassing asylum seekers in hotels, demanding to get entry to those hotels, doing interviews with people inside and outside, of course, to ramp up anger towards the asylum seekers and the people who were running these ex-hotels. Remember, they're not hotels, they're ex-hotels. Now that, and of course, one of the points that he raised was the cost. This is extremely expensive. Why are we paying so much money for these people in these hotels? Well, the government is now moving people out of hotels. Part of the reason, of course, is the cost. Also because it's not very humane for people just to be stuck in a hotel for most of the day. It makes more sense to move them into other areas. But Farage is able to latch on to the fear aspect here. Oh, look, they're now being moved out of the hotels into your neighborhood. And notice he also used the word fair here. It's not fair. And he's used this often in the past as well. The fair thing really latches on because people think it's unfair. Why are these people being given free accommodation? Why are these people being moved up the property ladder ahead of me? You know, I'm a British person. I've been working. I've been paying my taxes. How is it possible that this asylum seeker arrives on a small boat and he's given a house straight away? That's not fair. And this narrative works really well. But the problem with that narrative is that they're not allowed to work. They're forbidden from working. I and others have advocated for asylum seekers to be allowed to work, to pay taxes, to contribute. Most of them want to work, but they're not allowed to do that. So the narrative of them being spongers and a burden on the state is extremely powerful. The narrative of an unfair system is dynamite. It's gold to people like Farage and Reform UK. They know that the asylum seekers can't work, but they sell a narrative that these people are sponging off the state, that they're a burden, that it's an unfair system. This is, unfortunately, because Farage is really good at spinning his narratives, he's very good at imagery. Unfortunately, this is going to hit home. The government have decided it's too expensive to keep people in hotels. It doesn't work out. It makes sense to move them into cheaper accommodation. The timing, I think, before the local elections is pretty terrible. I don't know if Serco did this on their own or the government thought it was a good idea for Serco to do it. Either way, it's a bit of a disaster because it reinforces the points that Farage has been pushing in this clip. The idea that it's unfair, that it's dangerous, that these people shouldn't be in the country in the first place. Why are we providing them with accommodation? All of these narratives. And he's delivering it from a middle class area. So he's able to use a narrative that worked on the working class. He can now use it on the middle class. So Farage can use it and abuse it as much as he wants. And unfortunately, I think he'll be quite successful.